Greetings and welcome back. We are in our ACT grammar prep. This is lecture number 7 on prepositions and conjunctions. We've covered already nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, and now it's time to turn to prepositions and conjunctions as the quote-unquote last parts of speech, even though of course we're aware that really they're not. We've started each of these lectures with a little bit of fun or ways to kind of show this whole project can't be taken that seriously, so let's do a little bit more. Let's talk for a second about taking the ACT, especially as it relates to energy conservation, the understanding that you need to conserve as much energy as possible. I will tell you this, the ACT is a test designed to break you down. I mean, you know, intellectually fatiguing you, it's constructed that way. So if you're not prepared for the amount of energy demand to take the ACT, you will struggle to finish and of course do well. The first thing to remember, and I've said this already, and I keep hammering it to you guys because it's such a huge part of understanding how to prep for the ACT. It is a 3-hour reading test. If you don't practice that kind of thing, and the reading, you're going to struggle no matter how prepared you are for the test, simply because you're going to miss answers that you actually know the answer to. It's just that you're so fatigued, all right? The ACT does require that you monitor your energy levels. You pay attention to the ways you can waste energy. For example, it makes some sense to practice the strategy that's going to work for you as you take the test and then stick with it. For example, some students like to scan over the whole section that they're about to test so they can kind of get a feeling of maybe the lay of the land. Other students just like to start at question 1, work right through the section from beginning to end. The question of going back and reviewing answers needs to be a part of your kind of pre-test ACT test taking strategy. I'm not going to tell you the best way to take the ACT because there is no one best way to take the ACT. You know, find the way I would suggest that works best for you and then practice conserving your energy. I do notice that the top test takers that I've worked with have 2 things always: confidence and enthusiasm. They are prepared the right way for the ACT, and when they take it, they actually try and see it as a game, as having fun. There's less fear, there's less anxiety for this group about their performance. And then finally, and this is huge, once the test is done, it's done. You've got to practice leaving it alone. It makes no sense to keep beating yourself up. After the test is finished, you got to get on with your life. The test is just one part, small, very small part of your life. Well, speaking of getting on now, let's turn quickly to the final 2 quote-unquote parts of speech, the preposition and the conjunction. Of course, as we've already pointed out, these are not really parts of speech, are they? We only really have 2 parts of speech, as we have said: something, a noun, a subject, a pronoun, doing something, a verb. We refer to it as a predicate if we're talking about the second part of the sentence. To amplify, to modify these 2 parts of speech, we have the adjectives and the adverbs. We've already spoken about those. To help the 2 parts of a sentence get on together is the way I like to say it. We use prepositions and conjunctions. So let's take them in that order, shall we? The preposition is a word or phrase that can connect a noun or a pronoun to some other piece of the sentence. Okay? Now, there's a number of ways to kind of help remember this. For years, we've taught it as what the squirrel can do to the log, or what the airplane can do to the cloud is another way that people have taught it. In the log, through the log, around the log, beside the log, from the log. Each of these words, in, through, around, beside, are prepositions. By the way, note the word preposition. You have to actually spell the word position. It's actually in the word preposition, right? Another group of prepositions enable you to express relative time when events took place: before, after, during, since, until. Still other prepositions connect and compare objects and ideas. For example, he walks like, a preposition. A duck, unlike, another preposition. Jen, who walks like, a preposition. A chicken. Or how about this for an example? No one is as good as, this is a preposition, you at shooting a basketball. How about this one? Except for, another preposition, Stephen, no one at the party wanted to be there. Finally, how about this for an example? Because of, prepositional phrase, you, my life is now worthwhile. Thank you, thank you. Prepositions are always attached to nouns and pronouns, often in what we call prepositional phrases. For example, to the country, over him, after the ball, in accordance with or wishes. All of these prepositional phrases. Grammatically speaking, the noun or pronoun in a prepositional phrase is called the object of the preposition, which means, in terms of pronouns, you must use the objective case. Go back to lecture 4 on pronouns if you've forgotten that one. So to say between, which is a preposition, you and I is a nominative case pronoun and therefore is wrong. Even though it sounds right to a lot of people to say between you and I, it's got to be between you and me. Me, of course, is a pronoun in the objective case, right? Hear it wrong one more time. The teacher argued with Steve and I. Nope. Hear it right. The teacher argued with Steve and me. Just to remind, take out the Steve and part of the sentence and read it. The teacher argued with I, or the teacher argued with me. Pretty easy way to remember it, right? The ACT folks love to make a distinction like this one, so go back over it again. I promise you will see this on the ACT, only you'll see it as a mistake, something that's wrong. You got to correct it. Well, let's ask about the use of like and as. This is often going to end up on the ACT, so let's think about this. Like is a preposition used for making comparisons. Because like introduces a prepositional phrase, it must be followed by a noun or pronoun. Tom looks like, there's your preposition, my dog, a noun. My dog looks like, preposition, me, a pronoun. As, the word as, along with as if and as though, is a conjunction. More in a second on these, okay? As introduces clauses and is followed by a verb. Steve does as, preposition, his father says. Do as, there another preposition, I say. Not as, preposition, I do. If you're not sure which to use, look for a verb. If a verb follows, you'll know that as is the word to use. For example, every day the child acts more like her mother. Notice no verb there. Or, he acts as if he had seen. There's your verb. Elvis alive. Right? In comparisons, the verb may sometimes be left out to avoid wordiness. Stay alert for usages in which the verb is optional. For example, Jeff loves the city as much as I, as opposed to I do. Right? There's no real need to use the word do here. But the words between and among sometimes cause problems, and the ACT loves to ask questions about this. Let's use between, anything split into two or divided by two, and use among for a division of more than two. For example, among the three of us, we ought to figure out the solution. We wouldn't say between the three of us. Or we should probably choose between Joe and David's answers, not among Joe and David's answers. Now, this next one will seem kind of silly, but it's one we have to talk about. Ending a sentence with a preposition. This is a real debate. The old school grammarians will tell you that this is a must, no rule, right? But to enforce the rule, a lot of times you do kind of sound old and arcane and a little bit old-fashioned and sometimes even pompous. For example, ending a sentence with a preposition is something up with which I will not put. You know, it kind of, you know, it's kind of very formal sounding. For example, notice this. After the test, we had many things about, there's your preposition, which to talk. Again, this does sound kind of stuffy and pompous. I mean, and some people have even argued that it's not a very clear rendering of the sentence. For example, you can rewrite it as after the test, we had many things to talk about. Right? We end the sentence with the preposition. But for ACT prep, you should recognize it right away, right? And we need to respect this rule. If it's a mistake provided by the ACT, make sure you see it right away, right? In other words, if there's a sentence option with a preposition at the end of the sentence, chances are it's going to be suspect, all right? Let's talk about the idiomatic use of prepositions. This is another one, kind of silly rule, but we got to pay attention to it for the ACT prep. Many words go kind of hand in hand with certain prepositions. We wait for the bus, right? Not wait on the bus. But you can both wait on and for a table depending on whether you intend to eat lunch or serve it, right? There's no consistent logic about why certain words go with certain prepositions. Again, like we said before, don't ask why, just learn it, okay? But let's study a few of these just so that you can begin to get them in your notes. Non-standard or informal, Jim stepped in a puddle. The standard, however, is Jim stepped into a puddle. The non-standard, I sympathize on your loss. The standard is I sympathize with your loss. Again, just to kind of finish this, we agree to a thing. We agree with a person. We are angry at a thing. We are angry with a person. Right? We wouldn't be angry with the loss of a game. We would be angry at a loss. Right? We compare to for illustration, and we compare with to examine qualities. We have concern in, be interested in. We have concern for, that's to be troubled. And we have concern with, that means to get involved. We concur in, that's an opinion. We concur with a person. We differ from things, and we differ with a person. Right? So I don't differ from Stephen, I differ with Stephen. Okay? All right, let's finish this lecture now by looking at the second part, and that is the conjunction. Some have called these words the glue that ties words, phrases, clauses together. Of course, the most famous conjunctions, and, right, green eggs and ham, of course, but also. In formal writing and speech, we try not to begin a sentence with either of these two conjunctions, and but. In informal grammar, obviously, it's okay. Just try not to overdo it. Let's talk about coordinating conjunctions. These join equivalent words, phrases, clauses. We already mentioned and but, or, yet, for, nor, so. Right. Compound sentences are when we use one of these coordinating conjunctions to link two or more clauses, right? Subordinating conjunctions link to disparate ideas. If a coordinating links equal, subordinating links to disparate ideas in a single sentence. Of course, this list, right, it's a list that you can Google and see: after, while, although, as if, as though, because, before, if, in order to, since, so that, though, unless, until, when, whenever, where, whereas, wherever, whether. For an example, while, there's your subordinating conjunction. Joe rushed to practice. He put on his football uniform. We do have subordinate clauses as well, right? Dependent clauses. These cannot stand alone. They depend on independent clauses, that is to say, a full sentence. More on these clauses later in another lecture, right? The third type of conjunction is what we call a correlative conjunction. These always come in pairs. Neither nor, either or, not only but also, whether or not, both, and. Some pairs are almost inseparable. We rarely find either without or neither without nor. For example, I'll either go for a walk or go to sleep when I get home. Neither, another example, neither rain nor sleet will keep me from seeing you tonight. Now the big thing here is just to note, you want to avoid either nor and neither or. And you may see that on an ACT as just a way to kind of, check to see if you understand these distinctions, right? Okay, so short and sweet and to the point, there you go. We've now covered the major grammar rules that you need to know to be able to score well on the English grammar usage section of the ACT. Now we're going to turn in our final lectures to talk about sentence problems, okay, now that we've finished this parts of speech. And in Lecture 8, we're going to talk more about how the ACT can and will test you on your understanding of proper sentence construction. So I welcome you back here in a few. Thank you.